Okay, hi everyone. How are you? Um, when Linda asked if I maybe would host a meeting, I thought of what I might be able to contribute. I listened to, of course, all the meetings since the fall, and I've learned so much from all of you that I thought what I could sort of contribute is my background in tarot, and I often use tarot together with astrology. So, just I guess a quick background I began to study tarot before astrology, and I was studying it very seriously. And it was through my first classes in tarot when they were teaching the astrological correspondences, that I fell in love with astrology. And I began to study EA 10 years ago now. And I would consider myself a very serious and devoted student. I do readings, but I don't have a professional practice. So I come at all of this from studying a lot. My major tarot teacher has been Marcus Katz of Tarot Professionals, and I've worked with him on some decks. I did the Heckademia Tarot. It's like a 2-year course. And I work a lot with the visual imagery too. So I'm a very visual person. Many of you know I'm also an artist. So for me, tarot is really quite a natural system. And as I said, when I fell in love with astrology, the tarot really helped me visualize all of the archetypes in astrology. So in my mind, I have them both really um, infused together. But what I thought I would do today is give you a basic background of the tarot as I know it. And I know that many of us astrologers also read tarot, and many of us have, a few different divination systems that we use, but I didn't know how many in this group. So I thought I'd better cover the basics so that we were all on the same page about it. When I learned the correspondences that I learned are from the Golden Dawn, because I study with Marcus, and it's the UK system that comes from the Golden Dawn and Book T that they had on the tarot and their teachings. All of my correspondences are theirs. There's another system, I think it's called the continental system that the Europeans used, but the ones I'm teaching to or showing you today are from the Golden Dawn. So we're going to go over the majors and the minors. And for today, we're not going to talk about the court cards at all. So everyone knows that the tarot has three basic sections: the major arcana, minor arcana, and then the courts. So my first slide here is showing the majors with all of their correspondences. On this first page, they're organized by numerology, which is the first way that I learned. So you can see that from left to right is the number sequence of the cards. So 1 to 9, and then 10 to 12, and then the last three. The Fool doesn't have a number correspondence, so it's a 0, so it doesn't show up on this chart. Um, these beginning oppositions and equilibrium are sort of the structure of numerology for the major decks or for the major arcana. So you can see the repeating patterns. Magician is 1, the wheel is also 1, 1 plus 0, and then the sun 19 is the 10 again. So that's why it's in this sort of grid. You can see underneath all of the cards are the correspondences with astrology. So in the majors, there are the 12 zodiac signs and the 10 planets represented. The Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto before were just the elements like water, earth, or water, fire, and air. But now we have them as Neptune, Pluto, and Uranus. So that's the beginning of the majors. So I have the next slides, them gathered on the wheel by the signs, and then the planets. So again, with astrology and tarot, I know we all use sort of keywords to organize the meaning. So in the context of today, I just wanted to keep it to really basic keywords so that we could kind of um, well, with astrology, you know, once you get one archetype, you can expand, and it has an enormous amount of meaning behind each archetype. But again, for this small meeting, I thought what I would do is put them just in key words, because we could talk for a half an hour on each of these archetypes. But um, as I said, I use keywords. So you can see that Aries is the emperor. We'll go around the wheel first. Taurus is represented by the Hierophant, or corresponds to the Hierophant. The Lovers is Gemini. Chariot is Cancer. Strength is Leo. Hermit is Virgo. Justice is Libra. Death, Scorpio. Temperance, Sagittarius. The Devil, Capricorn. The Star, Aquarius. And the Moon corresponds to Pisces. I don't think we'll have time for me to go through every single keyword, but you know, I could choose, say, 2 or 3 as an example. So let's start with Aries. In the tarot, when we learn it, the keywords for the emperor are things like dominion, stability, endurance, authority, rulership, reason, and commanding power. So when we have the Aries and we see cardinal fire, you can see that some of it, there is sort of a thematic similarity between the two, but the tarot has, you know, subtle differences. For instance, with Aries, we think of it cardinal, more impulsive, more the warrior kind of archetype. And then with the tarot, with the emperor, we think of it as a more stable kind of archetype. Still, they're both they both have that idea of um, taking dominion over things, or taking a sort of power, or some sort of power over things, and having things, I guess, within their power. Another one that I could choose maybe is the Hermit, the Virgo. And so the keywords for Hermit are simplicity, frugality, wisdom, example, solitude, inner guide, silence, introspection. And so I've always connected the Hermit and Virgo with that part of Virgo that really is the purity of, um, you know, behavior, example, health. Like there's nothing gratuitous in the Virgo. They've kind of distilled it down into some sort of wisdom, some sort of really practical wisdom. Um, anyway, so those are 2 examples. So they're, as I said, fused in my own mind as combined, but for someone who's new to having the tarot and the correspondences, you might take some time, if you were to, you know, learn more about it, of just sort of contemplating the tarot keywords and then the astrological keywords, and see where they fit for you inside of a kind of thematic meaning. But I promise you they will, as you contemplate them. Okay, so the next slide are the planets. So the planets are represented by others of the majors. And again, I'll choose a couple to say the keywords, but I guess we can go around first. I don't know if the screen's very clear for all of you, but tarot corresponds to Mars, or the tower, I should say, corresponds to Mars. The Empress is Venus. The Magician is Mercury. High Priestess is the Moon. The Sun is the Sun. And then Mercury, of course, is Mercury again. I went by the houses, of course, all the way around. Venus in its Libra or 7th house version, still Empress. Pluto is Judgment. Jupiter is the Wheel. The World is Saturn. Fool is Uranus. And the Hanged Man is Neptune. So I can choose, maybe because a lot of us are EA astrologers, Judgment. The keywords there for tarot is resurrection, calling, the soul's rebirth, renewal, absolution, liberation, and transformation. So for me, whenever, as a tarot reader, whenever I see Pluto in a reading, I automatically know it is the person's soul, speaking through or being represented by the card. But of course, the way we see Pluto, it definitely has um, the theme of resurrection to it, especially in EA. Calling, as in the soul's calling or the direction of the soul, the soul's rebirth, renewal for sure. The Pluto, is always sort of striving or always hungry for that renewal or renewing itself in some way, and transformation, of course. Um, Maybe I'll go over and look at Venus, so the Empress. Keywords for the Empress are things like fertility, abundance, trusting in nature, creativity, comfort and contentment. Definitely values. The Empress in tarot, whenever she shows up, you're having represented an energy, an archetype of total trust that everything will be taken care of, everything will be fine, the total trust and creativity. And the Empress always knows exactly what the important things are. And she definitely knows what the gratuitous things are, which is part of her faith in nature. She knows that everything that's needed will always be there. Anyway, so 2 examples. And again, if you were to pursue using tarot, then as you complicate or contemplated the keywords of tarot, and what you know about the planet's archetypes, that when you find the common ground, that's where you can sort of see where they fit together if you would ever use them for readings. So the next slide I have here are the rulers, the signs and their rulers. So obviously in astrology, we use the rulers constantly. I mean, we don't even think of the archetype without the planetary ruler. So in tarot, this presents to us these pairs of cards that have special meanings that wouldn't necessarily be a special relationship for tarot readers that don't use astrology. What it means for an astrologer, if you were to start using tarot, would be that if you were to see, say, the Hierophant down here with Venus both represented in a reading, you would know that there was some sort of special relationship between the 2 cards. So if you were doing like a Celtic cross, the Hierophant showed up somewhere, or Venus showed up somewhere in the same spread, you'd know to look at those 2 positions as having the same kind of relationship as our sign and ruler relationship has in astrology. The other interesting thing about seeing the pairs together is when you look at the images. One thing I've learned about tarot, because it's a visual divination system, is that the pictures really have a lot of meaning. In fact, the way I've learned tarot is that if you're at a loss ever for something to say, you can read the cards literally, and they will always have a message that's spooky accurate. I guess it's hard to explain without an example, but if we were to look at, say, down here, the Leo and the ruler, the sun, so the 2 pictures, the yellow and the red flag and the lion, all of these visual cues together have meaning. So in the Leo, or in the strength card, this figure, the woman who's got the lion in red there, corresponds or will correlate somehow to this yellow sun and the red flag. Each tarot deck is different, of course, and each artist represents the archetypes differently. But tarot has a really special kind of way to act in your intuition and respond to the moment, in that you can literally read the pictures together. So when you have these 2 pairs come up in a reading, always look at the pictures between them, and you'll have messages in these pictures together. Okay, the next slide I have are the polarities. So also in astrology, we use these polarities. And in the tarot, they're represented by another special relationship between the two cards. Let's see. So here I've got the polarities with the keywords, just really basic keywords for the tarot. And I don't think, again, that we have time to go through each and every one, but I could choose a couple for us just to go through. And please, if you ever have a comment or a question, stop and ask. So let's look at maybe the Taurus Scorpio polarity represented by the Hierophant and Death. So the Hierophant is always a bridge between the material world and the spiritual world in terms of a voice. So the Hierophant always represents the teacher or the voice that is sort of downloading spirit into the ears of people in the, you know, in the material world, or the opposite way, taking to God in maybe the form of prayer, the you know, the the wishes or the voice of the people in the material world back up to spirit. So his keywords are voice, bridge, tradition. Tradition, of course, because that position is usually in places like church or places of authority. Teaching, mercy, intuition, and those are all on the Taurus side. And then the Scorpio polarity is transformation as opposed to tradition, new horizons in, I guess, in opposition or in contrast to expert authority. Endings in, I guess there's no beginnings in Hierophant, but let's see. Transition as opposed to, I guess, the tradition again. Acceptance, decay. Anyway, again, once you started to contemplate the polarities, what you know from astrology and the archetypes in tarot, and you know, contemplated them, what they all mean to you, that you would be able to find that polarity relationship between the two cards, and they would begin to be like that special pairing for you in your mind, if you understand what I mean. Let's see, another one we could go through is the Cancer Capricorn. The Chariot, corresponding to Cancer, has always been the one major that has always been a little challenging to me, because the Chariot generally is an energy or an archetype of going out into the world, whereas Cancer in astrology is very much, you know, a private experience, emotional, internal kind of experience. Although, you know, once you contemplate and lived with the archetypes together for some time, they do share a certain theme of bringing your own internal experience out into the world. Not necessarily in action the way a Mars would be, but more in the Cancer, in that you start to represent yourself in the world as your internal experience. So in the Chariot, you're always moving between the two, the dark and the light, or the two polarities of yin and yang, and you're trying to sort of negotiate that middle ground where you can represent yourself authentically in the world, and that's how it relates to Cancer to me. Anyway, regeneration, manic being in the two polarities, a kind of quest for, I find, authenticity, or a quest to be your true. It's more an internal quest, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. To be determined, to be very privately devoted. Do you understand what I mean by that in Cancer? Anyways, it's a very internal and emotional experience. The Devil being the polarity is, of course, materialism. The Devil in tarot has all sorts of reputations, but the basic theme is it's life or experience without spirituality. It's like the material world, the bondage to attachment, where the ego and the individual becomes the very, very top experience of the universe and there's nothing above it kind of idea of materialism. The Capricorn is very attached to the outside world and idols and lusts and desires and yeah, repression of anything that would be, I guess, nurturing or selfless the way Cancer is. Anyway, that's two examples of the polarities. But again, if you were ever to study the two together, tarot and astrology, that would be one of the things that you would study and start to know these cards as pairs. What else can I say here? Oh, yes, in this one, I also wanted to point out when I was talking about, it's a visual form, a visual divination system. It's really apparent in some of these pairs, Strength and the Star, the two figures, the two women and their postures being very similar. In the Strength, it's the figure that has some sort of, or her attention is more down into her lower natures, which is the lion. And in the Star card, it's the figure that's sort of being looked down upon by the stars. So you can sort of begin to make associations within yourself of how with Leo or with the Strength card, it's about how you're relating to your own ego or how you're relating to your own courageous action in the world, your own authenticity. But in the Star card, it's more about how you're relating to what's above you, what you are the result of in terms of the universe being the cause and you being the effect. Also, you can see down here with the Lovers and the Temperance, both having the angel. Both of these cards are cards of healing and cards of some sort of integration of opposites. But then in the Lovers card, it's the figures, it's more on the material world where there's like a balance of you and the other always having to be sorted out in the Lovers. But in Temperance represents the actual combining of the two forces. Usually in Temperance, it's the divine or the combination of something spiritual into the material, into one thing. But you can see because of the angels, there's that visual thematic continuity. I guess just one more. See how the Hermit, and he's got his lantern, and then the moon, it's almost like the light of the lantern in the moon. Anyways, things like these are really, really interesting for you to contemplate. And eventually you would have a sort of visual vocabulary when you're doing your readings, or if you start using it with your astrology charts, where you get this whole other narrative, this whole other visual lexicon for your intuition to use when it's, coming up with meaning. Okay, so the next place we're going to go is to the minors. So when I was, that very first slide, this one, when I had the majors out with this rhythm of beginning, opposition, and equilibrium with the numbers. In the tarot, each minor suit has cards from ace to 10, and they all also have astrological correspondences. So these first two slides I'm showing based on, this one was Manly P. Hall's organization around the time of the Golden Dawn. And so this is in the same sort of structure as that beginning, opposition, and equilibrium. So we have here the ace to the 9, well, the 10 over in the right, but the 10's not included in this particular organization. You have this sort of three sets of 3. So you have a beginning of 3 cards, an opposition of 3 cards, equilibrium of 3 cards. The beginning is like our cardinal, opposition is somewhat like our fixed, and then the equilibrium is somewhat like our mutable. And then you can see in the tarot, like again, are the first three houses, the second three houses, third three houses. You have three levels of energy, of the same kind of energy within that first grouping. Do you understand what I mean? So this would be the wands. And just another quick example of the cups. Now the tens are not included because by numerology, the 10 is back to a 1, so the 10 goes back up to the ace. Now, you can see at the bottom here, they all have the astrological correspondences. So more interesting for us as astrologers is a little bit of the different system where the the 9 cards go from a 2 to the 10. In this system, but this one is the Golden Dawn, the aces are left out because they're like the pure potential of the suit. And so what we have here are the cardinal fixed mutables, right, of each season, each sign, and it goes in this, what I think is a beautiful system. You can see here that we have Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sag, and then Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. For each of these, you have 3 cards, and they go numerologically 2 through 10, and then they're assigned their astrological sign based on their number, where they are in the sequence. And then the planets follow the, is it the Chaldean order? The planetary hours, you know, the basic order. We don't use Neptune, Pluto, or Uranus in this. It's just the 7 over and over. And so it falls into this beautiful system where you have 3 wands, 3 pentacles, 3 swords, 3 cups, 3 wands, 3 pentacles, 3 swords, 3 cups. And of course, I don't think I had to tell you that the cups are water, the wands are fire, the pentacles are earth, and we're the last one, and the swords are air. I hope that's obvious. Anyway, and so I just have this picture up to show you the basic structure of how the correspondences work. And I do think it's a beautiful system. I think all of it's beautiful. I think all the divination systems that we use, astrology, tarot, numerology, the tree of life too, which I use for tarot, which I certainly didn't have time for today, but you know, if we're interested, we could do another meeting on that. But they're just these beautiful interlocking systems that the intuition just loves to use as languages for us when we're doing readings for people. Okay, so now we're going to look at the suits based on the astrology. So in these correspondences, the aces get left out because they're the full potential of the suit. So nothing's really happened in the ace yet. It's just when it shows up, it's like the potential, there's something potentially happening in the fire element in that, you know, in the spread or in the life or whatever you're asking the cards for. So here, the first 3 are Aries, then Leo, and then Sag with the planetary correspondences. Oh yes, okay, so that's the wands. And then we've got the key words. Now, when I was learning tarot and then astrology again, like I was explaining with the majors, when you're contemplating the key words and contemplating maybe keywords from astrology, if you keep it really simple, or everything you know about the archetypes in astrology, you can really find common themes so that the tarot begins to make sense to you visually representing these correspondences. Just to choose 2, so sorry, Jupiter and Leo say for the 6 of Wands, victory, recovery, leadership, triumph, vindication. So you can really get that idea of expansion, Jupiter, of your creative expression, Leo, or the search for authenticity, search being Jupiter, authenticity being Leo. Another one, say Mercury and Sagittarius, You've got urgency, you've got swift movement, you've got lift in spirits, news. So you've got all of these things happening in communications, but like quick, in speed, in fire, right? So another one would be the Mars in Aries. So creative, vision, opportunity, planning, aspiration. So you've got, very active. You've got cardinal fire, cardinal, cardinal. And then one last one, maybe Saturn in Sagittarius, overburdened, overwork or workload, oppression, overwhelming, obligations, responsibility, heavy. Saturn in Sagittarius. So you've got a lot of Sagittarius, a lot of, sorry, I'm just, anyway, so the Saturn makes the Sagittarius, your mutable fire, heavy, right? And so visually it's represented by you're taking all of these ideas, all of these maybe philosophies or expectations, all of these visions that you might have, but in Saturn, they're like heavy. There's a lot, there's responsibility that's like a contradicting kind of contradicting archetypes. And so you end up with keywords that make you feel heavy about the things that you want to do, or the things that are preventing you from being free or being able to move, Sagittarius like. Anyway, and like preventing your joy, obstacle to your joy. Okay, so if we go to the cups, we have Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, and another few keywords. I'll just choose one for these because I know we're starting to run out of time. So the Three of Cups being Mercury in Cancer, happiness, social network, merriment, friends, team, new lifestyle. So you can really get the idea of communications with caring for people. Lots of lighthearted nurturing going on between friends and that sort of thing. The Pentacles, we have Capricorn, the 2, 3, 4, Taurus, and Virgo for the last three. And an example of a keyword, let's choose Mars and Capricorn, the 3 of Pentacles, teamwork, patronage, loyalty, consolidation, and capability. So definitely active action in your career life, action in work, initiative and responsibilities, Capricorn authority responsibilities. Yeah, so those, I won't go through them all now, but certainly any of you are always, these are on a PDF. I can send them to any of you that might be interested in studying them more. Okay, so that's the basics of the majors and the minors and their astrological correspondences. So I was working on Wendy's chart. So there's a couple of different ways that I use tarot with the astrology. One is you actually put on the cards onto the archetypes of the chart, which I'll show you. The second one, which I really didn't get to in this meeting, but another time maybe if we're interested, would be when we are reading a chart and we have, for instance, let's say for Wendy, a transit of Pluto in the 7th house in Capricorn. And we're wondering, we look at the rulers, we look at the planets, and we're wondering what are the details of what she might be going through. We can, in astrology, really describe the themes of what's going on. But when it comes to the actual details and advice for that person, tarot works really well. The way, deeper areas of astrology do, but tarot also works really well. So if I was sitting with someone with their chart, like with Wendy, and we're saying, we're really looking for some more information or have a specific question about the 7th house or Pluto in the 7th house, we can, literally turn the cards over. And because of all the meaning in the cards and the astrology, we can get a really good sort of direction or answer to a question about the chart. As you can see in the past in these other slides, if we were to pull cards about the seventh house and say a two of pentacles showed up, we'd know that the cards were pointing us to Jupiter and Capricorn. And when we went back to her chart, we'd be able to look at where the Jupiter is, look at where the Capricorn is, look at where even the 10th house is or the ninth, and start to um, intuit some sort of meaning from what the cards, some sort of direction of what the cards are pointing to for an answer. For today in the meeting, though, I wanted to go through how we'd actually put the cards onto a chart. And why would we do this? Again, the divination system of tarot is very visual. So what it does is it really helps us to visualize what these archetypes are doing or their relationships together. It gives us sort of a metaphorical narrative, a more literary narrative to what, to what the astrological language usually is. So it just sorts of illustrates thematically what's going on in a different way. So for Wendy's chart, for instance, I have on her chart, she's got a Gemini on her ascendant and Sagittarius on the descendant. So we know that Gemini is with the lovers and Temperance is with the Sagittarius, or with the Sag, yep. And so we can start to see a narrative come through that we wouldn't necessarily get just from astrology. The lovers shows us that this person is someone who presents to the world or is seen by the world or looks at the world through the eyes of some sort of uh, themes of relationships and themes of trying to integrate differences, themes of trying to balance the other with the self. It's on the ascendant, so that's sort of part of it anyway. But it would talk about this person as maybe someone who is looking predominantly for peace and for harmony with other people and looking to healing relationships or healing, in their interactions with others. It's always going to be some sort of healing top of mind, right? In the descendant with Temperance there, you can see that this person also, when it comes to their relationships and their interactions with the other in their lives, is always going to be about combining the two, the other and the self, into one kind of element in some way for some healing purpose, always with Temperance. She could also be someone who is always looking to integrate the divine or the spiritual or the sort of higher energies with the material. It could be that as well. Or the emotions. See, the angel's foot is in the water with higher spiritual aspirations being the crown. Anyways, those sorts of themes. She has Pisces on the midheavens, so we'll have the moon themes. The moon themes for her in her career. The moon always talks about something that is more obviously an internal experience. The keywords for the moon that I had were things like escape, dreams, nights, fluctuations, the netherworlds, tides, fear, security, past lives. So all of tarot is going to talk about all of those themes in terms of her calling and how how she approaches her public standing in the world, right? And then likewise the Hermit being on the IC. So then the next layer would be, I just have my eye on the clock now, so I don't mean to hurry. I can slow down, but maybe just let me know if I'm going too fast or too slow. So at the next level, we can put in the rulers. So remember, each of the planets also have a card. So let's go back to the ascendant, and we can see the lovers being on the ascendant is ruled by Gemini, or rules Gemini, Mercury, that's represented by the magician. And in Wendy's chart, it's in the third house. So again, with the tarot kind of visual narratives, we can start to um, imagine this magician working for the lovers over in the third house. The magician is always an archetype of someone who is capable of much focus and concentration, awareness. The magician is easily able to bring some sort of higher message down into the world, and he always has in the tarot the right, all the ability to use any of the tools. So he's got the ability to use the material, his emotions, his spiritual nature, and his mind to accomplish what he wants to accomplish in the world. The Mercury part of it, in my mind, is always this focused attention. The mind is always busy trying to figure out, or not trying to figure out so much, but trying to identify what is my path, where am I going next, what is this, the very next thing to do. So this magician character is serving this lover's kind of outlook in the world. So in the third house, so always in communication and learning. Maybe you can see that this magician is very busy in her own locality, her own neighborhood, her own kind of maybe even smaller groups. And so you can see that maybe this person is um, some sort of peacemaking diplomat in her neighborhood, always sort of chatting or always busy, but always with this theme of peace and harmony and that sort of thing with the lovers. Anyway, I'll go maybe now to the descendants. So the temperance being that healing of, or the combining of two different elements always. The Jupiter, the planet that's correlated with Sagittarius, is over in the 12th house. So Jupiter is corresponds to the wheel card, which is always, always about fate, some sort of things that are completely beyond your own doing. So in the wheel card, when it shows up, you can either see that there's things like luck, things like fortune, things like karma, things like the things that come always go, things that go always come. This sort of the things that are really out of our control, but are always serving the sort of natural order in our lives somehow. They're never really opposing forces. It's just like the bigger flow of things. So you can see how her relationships and this theme of combining with others to make healing, or combining others to make some sort of third element, is, being acted out on a very, karmic level, 12th house, on a very spiritual level, somewhere really quite up above where the ego is. I would say that her relationships and her wherever she's interacting with the other in her life is always going to be sort of, I don't mean out of her control in a destiny, not out of her control in a negative way at all, but there's always going to be some sort of higher element in her relationships because the Jupiter is over in the 12th house. And they're always going to be maybe a little bit karmically influenced. Anyway, you can sort of see how you can see how we're putting together the relationships on the astrology chart. Okay, so in this slide, because we went through the minors, I wanted to quickly show you how the minors might fit in. Remember, there's 4 suits, and for each of the suits, there were 9 cards. And so there are only ever 36 minor cards that'll fit onto the chart. So what I have always taken this to mean is that sometimes in our charts, we have an extra special layer of information that the tarot can give to us. So when we have the right combination of planet in a sign that corresponds with one of the minor cards, we can always put it on this chart. And as well, whenever you're reading for Wendy, or whenever Wendy starts to read for herself, then she can say, when Saturn, or when the 8 of Cups show up, It's always going to be about her 10th house. It's always going to be something about her calling and her vocation, her where she is in the public in the world. When the 8 of Swords show up for her, it's always going to be about how she keeps herself trapped, how she's unable to see what's really going on around her. That's in the 12th house. So it's always going to be for her something about what she can't see, either in her subconscious or what she can't see, or how she doesn't let herself see something bigger happening in her life, especially because it's with Jupiter. Do you see how that works? The third minor that Wendy has in her chart is this Venus in Virgo. And then the Venus in Virgo is, the Venus in Virgo is always going to be about her um, her ability or her capacity for contentment and peace, her readiness in terms of her values, readiness in the sense that she doesn't have to be striving for anything. In the Venus in Virgo in the 9 of Pentacles, it means that you have everything that you need materially to um, to enact what you need to enact in the world. She has it in her 4th house, so it describes how Wendy may feel a lot of peace in her home life, a lot of peace in her private life, that underneath everything, especially ruled by the Virgo or by the Hermit, that she has like an inner wisdom and contentment and assuredness that she has everything that she needs. Okay, so the next slide, since a lot of us are EA astrologers, I thought I would put on her chart the cards that represent her Trinity of the past and her Trinity of the future. Again, it's just another way for us to use tarot to visualize the archetypes in the chart. So Judgment represents Pluto, and it's here in the 4th house. The South Node is in the 6th house, and it's ruled by Sagittarius. And then I hear a beep. And then the South Node ruler is Jupiter in the 12th house. So what we can see is that in the tarot language, her calling, her soul's yearning for transformation, her soul's yearning for some sort of transformative experience, resurrection, renewal, desire for transformation is happening in her 4th house fundamentally. The South Node being in Sagittarius is going to speak about someone who obviously is very used to this, or naturally combines different elements for healing purposes. So some sort of healer, but some sort of spiritual healer for sure. And then that's, ruled by the Jupiter in the 12th house, which is going to, again, speak about that sort of spiritual healer personality was very, very guided by forces, bigger than the ego, let's say, for simplicity. Okay. I also included death being the ruler of the ruler of the house that the South Node was in. And that ruler is Pluto again. So we can see that the themes of transformation and resurrection are repeated. Let's see. And then I included the South Nodes. Sorry, guys. I'm just losing track here. I guess the only thing that I added the Hierophant for was because that Jupiter, the South Node ruler, was in the house ruled by the Hierophant. And that Hierophant rules, or the Empress here, the Venus, I guess that's why I included it. The Venus is down with the Pluto again. So if I were to start talking about the narrative of the the characters on the tarot, I would see that this south node, being the healer that was, say, at the service or guided by something far bigger than herself, was serving as a voice, some sort of voice into the material from the divine. And that was always being, I guess, played out in her home and private life, which was the area that she was looking to resurrect from. Okay, I'm not being very articulate right at the moment, but I think the point that I'm trying to make is that with the characters of the tarot, you can start to expand and create a narrative of the archetypes. Okay, so in the future, I've got the polarity point that's over here ruled by the moon. And the north node is in that same house as the Hierophant, and the north node ruler then, or the archetype that ruled the house of the north node is down here in the fourth house, the Empress. So we have, we can see again that she's still looking to be some sort of voice in her, you know, on her, in a private level, in a private way, in an authentic way, some sort of voice between the spiritual and the material, with the polarity point, with the moon being ruling the house with the polarity point in it. You can see that the themes of her being something beyond the material world, or that her, yeah, that she's being called to channel something from deeper into the world, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Then I have, well, let's just go on. I'm so sorry about losing my train of thought, you guys. But here, I've got an example now of the chart populated by all of the archetypes from the tarot based on the correspondences. And you can see that if you were going to start, you know, really contemplating all these archetypes, you could come up with a lot of information to speak about the chart, a lot of messages to give to the person about the, you know, another level of meaning. And then the final slide that I have here is that we could also put the archetypes that represent the transits around the chart. And again, you could start speaking about, in tarot language, about the archetypes and how they were, you know, how they were influencing the houses. Yeah, I've got my eye on the clock and I think we're over. Is that correct?
That's okay. You can have a few more minutes if you wish.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, then let's, maybe I should ask you guys if you have any questions or any comments.
This is really excellent. It's a huge topic. You've done
Yeah, I know. It is a lot, I'm realizing now, but.
Well, you've done great. You have given us a beautiful explanation.
Okay, good. I'm glad it wasn't too much. If we do have another minute, and if there's no more comments, then maybe what I could do is look at, you know, look at one of these houses in a little more detail. Would you guys like that just for a minute?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So let's go, let's look at one of these houses where there's a transit. So we can, let's look at Jupiter here. So Jupiter right now is in Wendy's fifth house. And so what we know about the fifth house, I'm going to go back to, you know, mostly tarot language now, is that on the cusp of the fifth house is justice. Justice is an archetype of fair play, reason, debate, deliberation, equity, settlement. Justice is the archetype of, you don't really get to say what your ego wants in the situation. There's like a higher level of equality playing out, right? And so that's the rule of her fifth house. And so, tarot then talks about her fifth house, her sense of self, her creative expression is always going to have themes of um, a higher just order of things, let's say. She has the planets inside there, the tower. The tower is always about structures that you thought you were building, or structures that you thought were real, being blown apart by revelation, or being blown apart by new impulses, being blown apart by an order that you weren't expecting. So you can see the tower serving justice, serving the themes of an overarching equality that maybe in her fifth house she's going to be experiencing throughout her life, situations or events that would serve, I don't know what those red lines are, but the events that would serve to disrupt things that weren't serving equality in her life. The Hanged Man there, along with the Neptune, along with the Mars, is going to talk about her experience in creative expression is always going to involve revelations that transform her consciousness. There's always going to be themes of, she thought one thing was going on, she thought one thing was true, bang, from out of nowhere comes events, maybe realizations, maybe intuitions that correct things according to the themes, justice of the way things should be on a higher level, which in turn, Hanged Man creates an entirely different way of seeing things, an entirely different consciousness, right? So those three cards together are always going to be working together in her life. Justice, the ruler is the Empress, which is over, let's see, where is the Empress here? Where's Venus? Do I have her? Gee, I might have forgotten to put her in there. Oh no, it's the Venus in Virgo. That's why I don't see her. So the Venus in Virgo there, her idea of like, on a fundamental level, being content and being like very, very content or satisfied with nothing gratuitous. She has everything she needs. So she has a certain peace around being equipped to handle life, or equipped for comfort, let's say. Those revelatory experiences that change our consciousness with the Hanged Man are always going to be played out at home in a certain kind of trust in her inner self, or trust in her private life. Anyway, that's just an example of how you could start to put the cards together to explain themes in her life, in the houses. Okay. Unless there's something else, or unless we can take more time, then maybe that's a good place to say that I've showed you at least a basic introduction of how you might go about using the tarot combined with astrology.
Janie, that's fascinating. This is Wendy.
Hi. Oh, you're
Oh
here.
my,
I thought
yeah,
you weren't able to come.
I came late.
Oh,
I wasn't
hi.
sure what the format was. When you said that about the tower, of course, I was like cracking up. I was like, oh my God, of course it's there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's funny because when we see Mars, we don't really, in astrology, we're accustomed to seeing that archetype as some sort of, initiative or will, and, an action kind of energy, right? With the tower, there's another level of meaning where, you know, what really is our initiative? What really is our will? It's always going to be striving either for status quo or to get out of status quo, right? So, I mean, our own personal status quo. So with the tower, we can see that there's this some sort of destined path of Mars where you come up against moments or times in your life, events, people, whatever, where your initiative is wrong or your initiative is like blocked by some sort of realization that whatever you thought you were doing has just fallen apart. And then when it's combined with the Hanged Man there, you can see that that experience for you, Wendy, is going to be always serving a higher level of your, like a higher consciousness. Like every time you come up against that tower, it's like, oh my God, I can think differently now, or I have a whole new perspective on things now. Whereas
Right.
someone else might have that tower, say, combined with the sun, so their tower experiences might bring them not a divine revelatory consciousness so much, but a more playful attitude. So someone who had the tower combined with the sun might say, oh my God, what I thought I was doing just fell apart, but now I can just go and play because it's the sun. But for you, Wendy, it means when you come up against those experiences, it serves to literally bring your consciousness to a higher level than it ever was before.
Okay, thank you so much, Janine. And
Yeah,
Wendy, yeah.
you're very welcome.
Yeah, that really does describe Wendy, and it's a really amazing tool to use in conjunction with astrology.
Good. I'm glad.
Okay.
And if anyone would like, I'm very, very happy to send you, you know, these slides. So at least it can get you started, maybe if you're interested in learning more about it.
Okay, thanks again, and see you
Beautiful.
next time.
Awesome.
Okay. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye-bye.
That was great.
Thank you.